Let's dive into some of the things going on in your world on the business side. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you right out of the gate is Texas. So we went to Texas. There's been this big conversation about possibly the track getting reconfigured. I know that me and you've had some conversations about, man, what should happen there? Well, then we go have a race there. We have all these tire issues. And before the race began, I thought to myself, if this is a great race, of course we had tire issues, and it didn't turn out that way in terms of in many ways. But if this race is really great, what if they don't? It could stall or put everything on hold.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
You walk away from that race. You have the tire issues that a lot of people believe is air pressure related. We're not going to get into pointing fingers about what's creating those issues, but that had to change the course of your vision on that track.
Yeah.
In some way.
Sure.
Right. So what's the situation right now?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, like you said, you and I talked about it. I had thoughts going into that race of what it was going to be like. I thought about the way that the All-Star race was, the kind of race it was earlier this year, and compare that to the race that we just finished up. Very different races, and it's interesting. I mean, so what we're doing now is working with iRacing to research a couple of different profile changes that we might do at the track.
Oh, configurations.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you still are in search of some sort of alteration.
Well,
or seeing what's out there.
I want to kind of investigate what the options are. We learned a ton with iRacing around Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Atlanta is the first track that's been built based on an iRacing simulation. Mm-hmm. A lot like the race teams talk about simulations now, and they can show up at the track and they've already run it with that setup. We were able to not just build a track with a CAD drawing and all the engineering and math that goes into designing a track, but we're able to put virtual cars and go race and tweak it and make little itty-bitty changes that made a big difference in Atlanta Motor Speedway. And the way it raced is the way that we saw it was going to race in iRacing.
Yeah.
So that was a huge light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to figure out what could happen differently at Texas Motor Speedway. We haven't figured out exactly what it's going to look like yet. I think that we're going to make some changes, but I'm not sure. I also don't think that, kind of the race that we had this last time at Texas is really a reflection on a problem with the track. It's more like you're talking about. You've got, think about the difference between all the races the first half of the year and all the races in the second half of the year.
Yeah.
The engineers and the crew chiefs.
Oh, the cars
and the
got
teams,
faster, loads got heavier.
They learned.
Yeah.
And that's their job, to learn how to go fast.
We went to Vegas, and the car qualified 0.3 faster or something like that.
It's amazing.
They were going to see way more load.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to have to really adjust the way they looked at the air pressures and how that was going to be affected and how the durability of the tires was going to be tested at Vegas. So I'm honestly going into Vegas thinking we could see exactly what we saw at Texas with issues.
That's what I was thinking.
We didn't see any.
Yeah. I was surprised.
The teams had learned where a new threshold was in terms of being able to get that tire to live. So, yeah, I guess if I'm you, I look at Texas and I take out all the tire issues and then look at the race.
Right.
In terms of what am I going to do with this racetrack?
Right.
Right. When the cars weren't having issues, what was I watching? Was that great?
Yeah.
And there's another thing too, man. That surface is really getting into that sort of prime window of age.
Yeah, it is.
Whereas you might tear up a racetrack that's actually getting ready to produce its best work.
That's a great point. And keep in mind that the reason that we reprofiled Texas and repaved it isn't because the asphalt needed to be repaved. It was because we weren't happy with the quality of the racing that was happening at Texas. So we made changes to try to introduce something different to the to the show.
Yeah.
And that's why we took a swing at it back when we repaved and reprofiled.
When I look at races that I ran there and that I was part of, and the races that I've seen in the past, decade, I don't see a big difference.
Yeah. I mean,
there's years where it's a little more competitive.
Sure.
There was years where the package of the car, not the track, like the cars were different.
Sure.
So the racing was a little better. Or there was one race that was a snoozer. That's going to come and go no matter what, right?
Right.
That's not in the track's control. So, what is the button that you got to mash to pack that place out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're the guy. We wouldn't know that. What is the thing that really turns the fans on?
I think that is the question.
I know that they look at a race and go, that was boring, or man, the guy drove away and it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
But honestly, man, when I look back over the last 20 years, there's a lot of those races. That place was packed.
Packed. Yep.
With the same exact outcome.
Sure.
So what is it that really gets a fan? I'm going to this race. I'm going to go buy this ticket.
I don't think there is one thing, but that is the question for the whole sport. And, it's everything kind of working together. And that is our biggest opportunity in all of NASCAR, is to work together. Mm-hmm. It's to, get out there with the fans and engage with our fans, engage with our sponsors and the marketplaces that we're in. Put on good races that are fun to talk about, and highlight worthy racing that's fun to watch. Mm-hmm. All those things work together that make it happen. And I think the best way to look at that is to remember what was going on back in the 90s and the early 2000s. What was it about the sport that was so huge? And try to think about some of those details. And there are a lot of details.
Little details.
Oh, yeah.
Little things like a guy coming out to sign autographs on Sunday morning when he would otherwise not even be at the racetrack. I noticed for Charlotte, for the Roval, a lot of engagement on social media from you, other drivers,
Brad,
guys volunteering their time to add to the weekend, to add to the experience.
Huge.
And those are the details.
They are.
That moment of Brad or Jeff Gordon or somebody going out there to a souvenir rig only touches a fraction of the fans that are there. But multiple instances of that over the course of the weekend, the year.
Oh, yeah.
The fan comes expecting, knowing that that's going to be available to them, right?
I think if that happened every weekend and we had drivers give an hour of their time out in the souvenir midway, I mean, like you said, Jeff Gordon was out there, Brad Keselowski, a lot of other guys were out there. And, one fan, I think that impression is worth like 10,000 impressions, because they're going to tell everybody that opportunity. And if that happened every weekend in a NASCAR race, holy cow, what a cool opportunity that is. Yeah. And I think it does just build a momentum that is amazing. It's amazing how fast an hour goes.
It seems like that the drivers or some of the key people are understanding that message. It's starting to turn back toward where we as drivers, we're giving the bare minimum effort outside the car, like, hey man, if you want me to be there, what's in it for me? Or never thinking in a minute to give any free time. Right? Now it's starting to turn.
I think there is something turning, which is wonderful. And we are all in this together. And as Rick Hendrick always says, you can't sink half a boat. I think that the more that we collectively work together, I think all of us would say, man, I love racing, or I love NASCAR. I'm a NASCAR fan. Well, let's just all get in there and work together and deliver that message to our core audience.
Marcus, I don't know if you're willing to answer this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. I mean, listen, going back to the reconfiguration or the alterations, what options are you guys exploring? Like, what options are on the table, and how bold are you willing to go on that?
So Dale and I talked about this a little bit. You've got, when you talk about what options are there or how big can the changes be, Where the grandstands are is, it's virtually immovable. So you got to deal with where the current grandstands are, where the wall is, where the lights are, to do something that is reasonable in the budget to be able to make that happen. So the profile of the track is the thing that you can work with. And there's a lot in a profile. I mean, look at Atlanta Motor Speedway. We took Atlanta Motor Speedway and took it from, what people would call in the past have called a cookie cutter 1.5 miles, and have turned it into a 1.5 mile super speedway. Mm-hmm. And, that's made a big difference in the racing that you know is going to happen there. So at Texas, what could we do? I don't know. We're looking at different options. We've got, there's the parabolic style paving and design, progressive. You could bring the turns
down.
You can't
bring those words in here, man. Parabolic.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Listen to the engineers.
Yeah. I'm glad you used a hand gesture. I would have never known
that. You could bring the turns down both
flatter.
Sides, make it flatter. You could raise them up, make it more like Atlanta. Different things. You could put it back to the way it was, but I would kind of say, why do that? I mean, we've already tried that. So,
I think I feel like that back like it was is a good option. I know that probably doesn't get anybody's attention. If I'm on if I own the racetrack, and I would be worried, that would be the biggest risk. Is like, hey man, we're gonna put the profile back where we were originally, and I'm not sure exactly how many people are gonna be flooding to the ticket gates over that, right?
Yeah.
But I think of a progressive bank would be a better alternative than another Atlanta. I think even maybe even more aggressive than Homestead.
Sure.
In terms of that.
Well, in my observation, a lot of this has to do with drivers getting behind it and being supportive. I think certainly our fans are listening, and they want the drivers to be happy with it as well.
So if the drivers say that they don't want something, does that really affect your overall decision?
It's a factor. Yeah. It is definitely a factor. Yeah.
What about when they say the best thing to do is to tear it down and start over? I mean, like when they're trying to be so hot take-ish, do you take that personal?
I honestly, I don't like to hear it. I think it's really, foolish for us internally, a driver internally, to kind of tear down the sport. I think that's not a good business decision.
It doesn't feel very solution-based when they're saying stuff like that, because that's not realistic solutions.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people really think, I would probably feel the same way, because I did actually. So when y'all were talking about Atlanta, making a change there,
right?
High Racing came to me and they said, "Hey man, they're going to change Atlanta. We're going to have this version of Atlanta on the alpha site for you to try. Everybody is encouraged to go mess with it and give some feedback. And we're getting ready to build it. What should we do? Throw some ideas out there." And I said, we got to revert it back to the true oval that it was.
Right. Yep.
Well,
asphalt, oval.
That was my first reaction.
Right.
And then they said, well, no, you can't move the grandstands. And I'm like, well, what are you doing then? If you can't change the shape of the track, then what are we changing? And they're like, okay, well, like you say, but the banking can be steeper, can be flatter. You can go progressive. You can go this, you can go that. And so once I realized, and once I got it through my thick skull, that the wall was going to stay where the wall is, and that the grandstands were not moving.
Right.
That helps me go to Texas and understand, like, hey man, this is what you have to work with. You enjoy that conversation with Marcus Smith? Well, he said a whole lot more. You ought to listen to the whole podcast. The Dale Jr. Download is available on all major podcast platforms.